Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSS Discovery and watched the dead star system grow larger on the main screen. 3 planets orbited a dying red star, and none of them should have been sending out the strange energy signals his ship had detected. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across 12 star systems, but they had never seen anything like this before. Dr. Lisa Park walked up to him holding her data pad. She was the ship's expert on old civilizations and strange life forms. Her face looked worried as she showed him the readings. The energy signals were coming from the 3rd planet, which looked like a big ball of gray rock with no air or water. "Captain, these readings don't make sense," Lisa said. "The planet is completely dead, but something down there is using more power than our entire ship." Lieutenant Ben Carter turned from his station. He was young but smart, and Jake trusted his judgment about weapons and danger. "Sir, I'm picking up geometric patterns under the surface. They're huge, maybe the size of cities." Jake nodded and called for Commander Amy Stone to come to the bridge. She worked for Earth Defense Force and was on the Discovery to watch for any threats to human colonies. When she arrived, Jake showed her what they had found. "We need to investigate," Jake decided, "but we go carefully. Lisa, prepare a landing team. Ben, keep our weapons ready, but don't target anything unless I say so." 2 hours later, Jake led a small team down to the planet's surface. Lisa carried her scientific equipment, and Ben brought 2 security officers. The planet's surface was covered in gray dust, and strange rock formations stuck up from the ground, like broken teeth. Lisa's scanner started beeping faster as they walked toward the largest energy source. "Captain, there's definitely something artificial down here. The structures go deep underground, maybe several miles." They climbed over a small hill and stopped. In front of them was a smooth black wall that rose straight up from the ground. It was perfectly flat and seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Jake had never seen anything like it in all his years exploring space. "How old do you think this is?" Jake asked. Lisa ran her scanner along the wall. "The materials are nothing in our database, but based on the erosion patterns around it, this could be millions of years old, maybe older." Ben found an opening in the wall, like a doorway, but with no door. The team followed him inside with their lights ready. The corridor was wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side, and the walls had strange symbols carved into them. They walked for 20 minutes before the corridor opened into a huge room. Their lights could not reach the ceiling or the far walls. In the center of the room stood a tall pillar covered in glowing blue symbols. "Don't touch anything," Jake warned, but Lisa was already scanning the pillar with her equipment. "Captain, this is incredible," she said. "The technology here is so advanced I can barely understand the readings. It's like comparing a campfire to our ship's reactor." As she spoke, one of the blue symbols on the pillar started glowing brighter. Then another symbol lit up, and another. Soon the entire pillar was shining like a small sun. "Everyone back," Jake ordered, but it was too late. The floor began to vibrate under their feet. More pillars throughout the room started glowing. The symbols on the walls came alive with light, and a low humming sound filled the air. "Sir, my scanner is going crazy," Lisa shouted over the noise. "Something is waking up down here. Multiple power sources are coming online." Ben grabbed Jake's arm. "Captain, we need to leave now. I'm reading movement in the lower levels." They ran back through the corridor as the humming grew louder behind them. When they reached the surface, Jake could see lights turning on under the ground in all directions. The dead planet was coming alive. "Discovery, we need immediate pickup," Jake called into his radio. The ship's pilot brought them up just as huge sections of the planet's surface began to slide apart. Underneath, Jake could see massive structures rising into the thin atmosphere. They were ships, but unlike any ships humanity had ever built. They were smooth and curved like living things, and they glowed with the same blue light as the pillar. "Get us out of here now," Jake ordered. As the Discovery jumped into faster-than-light travel, Jake watched one of the alien ships launch something small and fast toward the edge of the star system. Whatever they had awakened was already sending messages to somewhere else. Dr. Park looked at her readings with fear in her eyes. "Captain, I think we just woke up something that was supposed to stay asleep." Jake knew she was right. He also knew that humanity was about to face something it had never faced before. The question was whether they would be ready for what was coming. Admiral Frank Collins sat in the emergency meeting room on Earth, looking at the reports from the Discovery with growing alarm. 2 weeks had passed since Captain Morrison's team had awakened something in the dead system, and now strange ships were appearing all across the galaxy. Dr. Ryan Walsh, the military's expert on alien technology, stood at the front of the room showing pictures on the big screen. The alien ships looked like nothing humans had ever built. They were smooth and flowing, like someone had shaped them from liquid metal. "We're calling them the Nexari, based on the symbols Dr. Park found," Walsh explained. "Their technology is beyond anything we understand." "Watch this." The screen showed a video from the human colony on New Geneva. A single Nexari ship approached the planet's defense station. The humans fired their best weapons, but the energy beams passed right through the alien ship like it wasn't there. Then the ship became solid again and destroyed the entire station with one shot. Captain Nina Brooks, leader of the Special Forces unit called Void Hunters, shook her head in disbelief. "How do you fight something that can become a ghost whenever it wants?" Admiral Collins turned to Commander Amy Stone, who had just returned from the Discovery. "What did your people learn about their intentions?" Amy looked tired and worried. "Sir, Ambassador Helen Price tried to communicate with them 3 days ago. They responded, but their message was not good news. The screen changed to show text that had been translated from the alien symbols." Admiral Collins read it out loud. "You are temporary caretakers who have fulfilled your purpose. Your time of stewardship is ended. Return to your origin worlds and prepare for reassignment." Dr. Walsh pointed to another section of the message. "They don't see us as equals, Admiral. To them, we're like children who have been watching their house while they were away. Now they're back and want us to move out." The room fell silent as everyone thought about what this meant. The Nexari had been asleep for millions of years, but they still considered the galaxy to be their property. All the younger races, including humans, were just temporary occupants. "What about the other alien races?" Collins asked. "Are they fighting back?" Amy shook her head. "Most of them are surrendering or running away. The Zathari abandoned their home system yesterday. The Corvin are offering to serve the Nexari as slaves. Only a few species are even trying to resist." Captain Brooks stood up. "Admiral, my team has studied the attack on New Geneva. The Nexari ships are powerful, but they're not invincible. They have to become solid to use their weapons. If we time our attacks right, we might be able to hit them." Dr. Walsh pulled up more data. "The problem is their size and firepower. One Nexari ship is bigger than our largest battleship and has weapons that can crack a planet's crust. They also seem to know where our ships are going to be before we get there." Collins thought for a moment. "How many of them are there?" "We don't know yet," Amy answered, "but the Discovery detected activation signals from 17 different star systems. If each system has multiple ships, we could be looking at hundreds of vessels, maybe thousands." The Admiral walked to the window and looked out at Earth's blue sky. Somewhere out there, an ancient race was waking up and deciding that humanity had no right to exist as a free species. It was the greatest threat humans had ever faced. "Sir," Dr. Walsh said quietly, "there's something else. The Nexari message mentioned reassignment. We think they plan to use the younger races as workers or soldiers for some larger purpose." Collins turned back to the room. "Slavery." "Yes, sir. Advanced slavery. They would keep us alive but control everything we do." Captain Brooks stepped forward. "Admiral, my people want to fight. We didn't come this far as a species just to give up when some ancient bullies wake up from their nap. Collins looked around, the room at the faces of his officers. He saw fear, but he also saw determination. Humans had always been fighters, even when the odds were impossible. Very well, he decided. Send word to all human colonies and ships. We're not surrendering and we're not running. If the Nexari want to take our freedom, they'll have to fight us for it. Dr. Walsh looked worried. Sir, with respect, their technology is so far ahead of ours that it might be suicide. Maybe, Collins agreed. But humans have survived impossible odds before. We'll find a way to fight them, even if we have to reinvent warfare to do it. Amy smiled for the first time in days. What are your orders, Admiral? Collins walked back to the table and looked at the images of the Nexari ships. First, we evacuate non-essential personnel from the outer colonies. Second, we start modifying our ships for hit-and-run attacks. Third, we reach out to any alien species willing to work with us. And fourth, we figure out how their technology works so we can find weaknesses. Captain Brooks nodded. My Void Hunters are ready to start immediately. Good, Collins said, because I have a feeling we don't have much time. The Nexari have been patient for millions of years, but now that they're awake, they'll want to finish this quickly. As the meeting ended and officers hurried to carry out their orders, Collins stayed behind to look at the star charts. Earth was a small blue dot in a galaxy full of ancient powers and impossible technology. But it was humanity's home, and they would defend it no matter what the cost. Engineer Tony Kim worked frantically in his lab on Mars, surrounded by pieces of destroyed Nexari technology. 3 months had passed since the first attacks, and most alien races had either surrendered or been wiped out. But humans kept fighting, and that was causing problems for the ancient enemy. Captain Jake Morrison had just returned from another raid with pieces of a Nexari scout ship. His crew had used a new tactic that Tony had suggested. Instead of trying to fight the big ships directly, they attacked when the Nexari weren't expecting it and grabbed whatever they could before running away. The Nexari are getting frustrated, Jake told Tony as he handed over the alien components. They're commanders. Keep trying to predict our next move, but we keep doing things they don't expect. Tony smiled as he examined the strange materials. That's because they think like machines. They've been alive for millions of years, so they make plans that take centuries to complete. They can't understand why we would risk everything for short-term gains. Dr. Alex Rivera walked into the lab carrying his latest invention. He was a quantum physicist who had been working on ways to disrupt Nexari technology. His hair was messy and his clothes were wrinkled because he had been working for 3 days straight. Tony, I think I figured out how their phase shifting works, Alex said excitedly. They use quantum prediction algorithms to calculate where our weapons will be, then shift their ships out of phase just before impact. Can we stop it? Jake asked. Alex held up a small device that looked like a metal box with blinking lights. This is a chaos engine. It generates completely random interference patterns. If I'm right, it should make their prediction computers go crazy. General Kate Murphy chose that moment to enter the lab. She commanded all human ground forces and had been looking for ways to fight the Nexari if they invaded planets. Her uniform was covered in dust from the training exercises she had been running. Gentlemen, I hate to interrupt, but we have a situation. Captain Brooks needs immediate support at Titan. Jake grabbed his jacket. What's happening? The Nexari sent a fleet to destroy our main shipyard. Brooks is there with just 5 ships against 20 of theirs. She's trying a new tactic, but she needs backup. Tony quickly attached Alex's Chaos engine to a portable power source. Take this with you. If Alex is right, it might give you an edge. Jake took the device and ran toward his ship. Within an hour, the Discovery was racing toward Titan at maximum speed. When they arrived, Jake could see the battle was already fierce. Captain Brooks's ships were darting around the much larger Nexari vessels like angry wasps attacking elephants. Discovery to Nina Brooks, Jake called on the radio. We're here to help. What's your plan? Brooks's voice came back full of excitement. Jake, these ancient jerks think they're so smart, but they keep trying to guess where we'll be next. Every time they fire, we're somewhere else. They're getting really angry. Jake watched as Brooks' ship suddenly dove toward a Nexari vessel, fired all its weapons, then spun away before the enemy could respond. The Nexari ship tried to phase shift, but it was too late. The human weapons hit its solid hull and tore a hole in its side. Now, Jake, Alex's voice came over the radio from Mars. Turn on the Chaos engine. Jake activated Tony's device, and immediately all the screens on his bridge started showing random patterns. But something amazing happened to the Nexari ships. They began flickering in and out of phase without control, like broken holograms. It's working, Ben Carter shouted from his weapons station. Their phase shifting is going haywire. The human ships pressed their attack. Without their ability to become ghosts, the Nexari vessels were just big, slow targets. Brooks coordinated the assault, and within an hour, 15 of the 20 enemy ships had been destroyed or disabled. But the victory came with a price. The Nexari had managed to damage 2 human ships and destroy the main construction platform at Titan. Worse, Jake could see more enemy fleets approaching from deeper in the solar system. This is just the beginning, Brooks said as they regrouped. They're going to send everything they have at us now. Back on Mars, Tony and Alex watched the battle reports with mixed feelings. They had won their first real victory against the Nexari, but the enemy was learning from the defeat. The next wave of attacks would be different. General Murphy joined them in the lab. The Chaos engine worked, but the Nexari adapted faster than we expected. They've already modified their ships to compensate for random interference. Tony nodded. Then we'll have to come up with something else. The good news is that we're making them change their plans. For the first time in millions of years, they have to react to what someone else is doing. Alex was already working on his next idea. I've been thinking about their longevity. Living for millions of years might actually be a weakness. Their brains probably can't process truly random events anymore. What do you mean? Murphy asked. Think about it. If you lived forever and had perfect memory, you would start to see patterns in everything. Eventually, you would lose the ability to deal with chaos. That's why they can't predict human behavior. Tony smiled. So we need to be more chaotic, not less. Exactly. We need to recruit people who think outside normal patterns. Pirates, rebels, criminals, artists, anyone who doesn't follow standard procedures. Murphy looked surprised. You want to fill our military with troublemakers? The biggest troublemakers we can find, Alex confirmed, because troublemakers are exactly what the Nexari can't handle. As night fell on Mars, the 3 humans made plans for a new kind of warfare. They would use humanity's greatest strength against an enemy that had forgotten what it meant to be unpredictable. The Nexari had awakened expecting to find a galaxy full of orderly, predictable civilizations. Instead, they had found humans, and humans were about to teach them that chaos could be more powerful than any ancient technology. Colonel Sam Rodriguez crouched behind a broken wall on the prison planet Arcturus Prime, watching Nexari guards patrol the compound, where thousands of humans and aliens were being held. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Titan, and the war had spread across dozens of star systems. The Nexari had started capturing people instead of just destroying them, which gave humanity new opportunities to fight back. Dr. Maria Santos worked quietly beside him, studying readings from her scanner. She was a biologist who had made an incredible discovery about their ancient enemies. Her research showed that the Nexari, despite their advanced technology, had serious biological limitations that came from living too long. The guards change positions every 47 minutes, Sam whispered. Just like they did yesterday and the day before. They can't help following patterns. Maria nodded and pointed to her scanner. It's worse than that, Sam. Look at their brain activity readings. After millions of years of life, their nervous systems have become completely rigid. They literally cannot process random events anymore. Captain Luke Thompson waited in orbit above the planet in his experimental ship, the HSS Defiant. Tony Kim had built it using a combination of human engineering and captured Nexari technology. Unlike pure human ships, the Defiant could phase shift for short periods, but it also had something the Nexari vessels lacked: unpredictability engines that made random course changes every few seconds. "Defiant to ground team," Luke whispered into his radio. "I count 12 guard towers and about 50 Nexari soldiers, but there's something weird about their movements." "What do you mean?" Sam asked. "They're moving in mathematical patterns, perfect geometric shapes. It's like watching a computer program instead of living beings." Maria smiled. "That's exactly what they are now. After living for millions of years, they've lost the ability to be truly alive. They're basically organic machines." This discovery had changed everything about how humans fought the war. Instead of trying to match Nexari technology, they focused on being as chaotic and unpredictable as possible. It was working. More importantly, other alien races were starting to fight back after seeing human successes. The Corvin, who had initially offered to become Nexari slaves, had joined the resistance. After human advisors taught them guerrilla warfare tactics, the Zathari had returned to their home system with human-built chaos engines. Even some of the smaller species were beginning to hope that the ancient overlords could be defeated. "Ground team, this is Nina Brooks," came a voice over the radio. Captain Brooks was leading a simultaneous attack on a Nexari facility 3 star systems away. "We've got a problem. The Nexari are adapting faster than expected. They've started using completely random attack patterns." Sam frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Maria said they can't handle randomness." "They can't," Maria explained. "But they can program their computers to generate random patterns. It's artificial chaos, but it's effective." Luke's voice came over the radio with excitement. "Wait, I'm picking up something interesting. The Nexari ship in orbit is broadcasting on multiple frequencies. They're not just communicating with each other. They're connected to some kind of central network." "A hive mind?" Sam asked. "Not exactly," Maria said, studying her readings. "More like a distributed computer system. Each Nexari is like a biological processor connected to a vast network. That's how they coordinate so perfectly, but it's also their weakness." "How so?" "If we can disrupt the network, we can blind them all at once. They've become so dependent on their shared intelligence that individual Nexari can barely think for themselves anymore." Sam looked at the prison compound with new eyes. "Maria, how many Nexari do you think are in that facility?" "Maybe 200. Why?" "Because I just had a crazy idea. Luke, can the Defiant systems handle a really big chaos burst?" Luke checked his instruments. "Define really big." "Big enough to scramble every Nexari brain on this planet at the same time." There was a pause before Luke answered. "Sam, that's insane. We don't know what that would do to their network." "Exactly," Sam grinned. "They won't know either, which means they can't predict it or plan for it." Maria ran quick calculations on her scanner. "It might work. If we overload their network connection with pure chaos, their biological processors might shut down temporarily." "How temporarily?" Luke asked. "Could be minutes, could be hours. We won't know until we try." Sam made his decision. "Luke, prepare for maximum chaos burst on my signal. Maria, get ready to monitor their biological responses. And everyone remember, this is exactly the kind of stupid, unpredictable plan that the Nexari hate most." Luke began charging the Defiant's chaos engines while Sam's ground team moved into position around the prison compound. In other star systems, Captain Brooks and her teams prepared for similar attacks. If the plan worked, they would free thousands of prisoners and deal a major blow to Nexari operations. Chaos burst in 30 seconds, Luke announced. Sam watched the Nexari guards continue their precise mathematical patrol patterns. In a few moments, those ancient minds would experience something they hadn't felt in millions of years. Complete confusion. 10 seconds, Luke called. Maria gripped her scanner tightly. Here we go. Chaos burst now. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every Nexari on the planet suddenly stopped moving. Their perfect coordination disappeared as their network connection overloaded with random data. Some of them fell to the ground. Others began moving in confused circles. It worked, Sam shouted. All teams go now! The prison break was swift and successful. Thousands of humans and aliens were freed while the Nexari guards stumbled around like confused children. But the real victory was what Maria discovered during the chaos burst. Sam, I recorded everything, she said excitedly. I know how their network works now. And more importantly, I know how to break it permanently. As the rescued prisoners were loaded onto human ships, Sam realized that the war had just taken a major turn. Humanity had found the Nexari's greatest weakness, and they were about to exploit it in ways the ancient race could never predict. Captain Steve Chen floated in the cramped cockpit of his deep space reconnaissance ship, watching the massive Nexari Revival Center through his scope. The structure was bigger than Earth's moon and filled with millions of sleeping ancient beings waiting to be awakened. His job was to gather intelligence for the most daring operation humanity had ever attempted. Dr. Paul Jackson sat beside him, studying psychological profiles of the captured Nexari commander they had interrogated for weeks. The prisoner had revealed the locations of 7 revival centers scattered across the galaxy, but more importantly, he had shown them how the ancient minds really worked. It's fascinating and terrifying at the same time, Paul said quietly. This commander has lived for 12 million years, but his emotional development stopped when he was maybe 50 years old by human standards. He has the wisdom of ages, but the psychological flexibility of a rock. Lieutenant Commander Dana White listened from the communications station while monitoring Nexari network traffic. She was an intelligence officer who had become expert at understanding their enemies' communication patterns. What she had learned was helping humanity plan their greatest gamble yet. The revival centers are all connected, Dana explained. If we can hit them simultaneously with coordinated chaos attacks, we might be able to crash their entire awakening process. Steve adjusted his scope to get a better view of the center's defenses. That's a lot of firepower protecting this place, and there are 6 others just like it scattered across the galaxy. Actually, there's something else, Paul said, reviewing his notes from the interrogation. The commander let slip that there's a primary revival facility that controls all the others. If we could find and destroy that one, it might shut down the entire network. Dana's equipment suddenly started beeping. Guys, we need to get out of here. I'm picking up a Nexari patrol fleet heading this way. As Steve's ship slipped away into the darkness between stars, the 3 humans discussed what they had learned. The Nexari had survived for millions of years by being cautious and methodical. They planned everything in advance and never took unnecessary risks. But that caution was also their weakness when facing an enemy that thrived on taking crazy chances. Back on Earth, Admiral Collins studied the intelligence reports while meeting with his top commanders. Captain Morrison had just returned from training alien resistance fighters in human tactics. Captain Brooks was preparing her Void Hunters for the most dangerous mission they had ever attempted. General Murphy was coordinating with ground forces across 12 human colonies. The plan is simple but insane, Collins explained to the assembled officers. We attack all 7 revival centers at exactly the same time, using everything we've learned about chaos warfare. While they're dealing with those attacks, a small team will infiltrate the primary facility and destroy it. Captain Brooks stepped forward. Admiral, my team volunteers for the primary target. I was hoping you would say that, Collins smiled grimly. But you won't be going alone. Captain Morrison will provide tactical support, and we're sending our best chaos specialists with you. Tony Kim and Alex Rivera had spent months preparing for this moment. They had built the most advanced chaos engines humanity had ever created, devices so unpredictable that even their inventors didn't know exactly what they would do when activated. The beauty of true chaos, Alex explained to the assembled team, is that it can't be planned for or predicted. The Nexari will try to calculate millions of possible outcomes, but chaos doesn't follow mathematical rules. Dr. Maria Santos added her biological expertise to the mission planning. Remember, the Nexari minds can't adapt to truly random events. If we hit them with enough chaos at once, their entire network might collapse permanently. The day of the Great Offensive arrived with nervous energy filling every human ship and base. Captain Chen's reconnaissance teams had identified the exact locations of all revival centers. Captain Brooks led a small strike force toward the primary facility, while other teams prepared to attack the secondary centers. Remember, Admiral Collins broadcast to all human forces, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. Every species in the galaxy is counting on us to succeed. Show these ancient bullies what humans can do when we work together. The attacks began simultaneously across 7 star systems. Human ships, now crewed by mixed teams of humans and allied aliens, swarmed the revival centers like angry hornets. Instead of fighting in organized formations, they used pure chaos tactics. Ships would suddenly change direction for no reason, weapons fired in random patterns, and chaos engines broadcast interference that made Nexari prediction computers crash. At the primary facility, Captain Morrison's tactical genius combined with Captain Brooks's aggressive leadership to create an assault that the Nexari couldn't understand or counter. Their ancient minds tried to analyze the human attack patterns, but found only randomness where they expected logic. Their defenses are adapting, Brooks reported over the radio as her ship dodged between massive Nexari weapons. But they can't adapt fast enough. Tony Kim's voice came from the engineering deck. Chaos engines at maximum output. The Nexari network is starting to fragment. The breakthrough came when Dr. Santos detected massive power fluctuations throughout the facility. The revival process is destabilizing, she announced. If we can maintain the chaos assault for just a few more minutes, the entire center might overload. Morrison made a decision that would be remembered for generations. Instead of pulling back to a safe distance, he ordered his ship to ram directly into the facility's central core while broadcasting pure chaos on all frequencies. "Jake, no!" Brooks shouted, but it was too late. The Discovery disappeared in a brilliant explosion that tore through the heart of the revival center. The blast created a cascade failure that spread to all connected facilities across the galaxy. Within hours, the entire Nexari Awakening network had collapsed. But Morrison's sacrifice had accomplished something even more important. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient Nexari found themselves facing a future they couldn't predict or control, and that terrified them more than any weapon humanity could have built. President Karen Davis stood on the observation deck of the space station orbiting the Nexari homeworld, watching as both human and alien ships worked together to establish the first truly galactic peace treaty. 2 years had passed since Captain Morrison's heroic sacrifice had crippled the ancient revival network, and the galaxy was finally learning to live without the fear of ancient overlords. Admiral Chris Moore, who had taken command of the combined fleet after Admiral Collins retired, pointed to the surface of the planet below. Most of the Nexari have chosen to enter permanent stasis rather than adapt to our chaotic new galaxy, but some of them are trying to learn how to think differently. Dr. Eric Barnes, who had spent the last year studying how to combine human and Nexari technology safely, showed President Davis his latest reports. The progressive faction of Nexari has been fascinating to work with. They're trying to relearn creativity and spontaneity after millions of years of rigid thinking. The war had ended not with a final battle, but with exhaustion and recognition. The Nexari had realized that their ancient methods couldn't defeat an enemy that refused to follow any rules. Meanwhile, humanity had learned that their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their courage, but their ability to think in ways that no one could predict. Captain Nina Brooks walked onto the observation deck, now wearing the uniform of the first director of the Galactic Defense Alliance. Her Void Hunters had become the core of a new military force that included soldiers from dozens of different species, all trained in human chaos tactics. The Zathari delegation just signed the treaty, Brooks reported with a smile. That makes 43 species now committed to the new alliance. Dr. Lisa Park, who had survived the destruction of the Discovery in an escape pod, joined the group carrying her latest research. She had spent 2 years studying Nexari technology and biology, learning secrets that the ancients had kept hidden for millions of years. "There's something you all need to know," Lisa said seriously. "The Nexari weren't the only ancient race that went into dormancy. My research has found evidence of at least 3 other species that are still sleeping somewhere in the galaxy, President." Davis felt a chill of worry. "Are they as dangerous as the Nexari?" "Potentially more dangerous," Lisa admitted. "But we're not the same species that accidentally woke up the Nexari 2 years ago. We've learned how to fight impossible odds, and we've built alliances across the galaxy." Admiral Moore nodded confidently. "Plus, we've got something now that we didn't have before. We've got hope." The Treaty of New Worlds was signed that afternoon in a ceremony that brought together representatives from species that had never worked together before. Humans had become the coordinators of the alliance, not because they were the strongest or smartest, but because they were the best at getting different groups to work together despite their differences. Tony Kim and Alex Rivera had established a new research institute dedicated to studying chaos theory and its applications to technology and warfare. Their work was creating innovations that even the Nexari found impossible to predict or understand. "The key insight," Alex explained to a gathering of scientists from many worlds, "is that randomness isn't just noise. It's actually a form of information that can be harnessed and directed." General Murphy had become the head of the Alliance's ground forces, training soldiers from dozens of species in the art of unpredictable warfare. Her motto had become famous across the galaxy: "When in doubt, do something crazy." But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy thought about itself. For millions of years, younger species had lived in fear that some ancient power would return to reclaim what they considered their property. Now that fear was gone, replaced by confidence that diversity and cooperation could overcome any threat. Dr. Maria Santos had made another crucial discovery while studying the biological effects of the war. "The stress of fighting an impossible enemy has actually accelerated human evolution," she reported. "Our brains are developing new neural pathways that make us even more adaptable and creative." The former Nexari commander who had been captured during the war chose to remain awake and serve as an advisor to the Alliance. His ancient wisdom, combined with human unpredictability, created strategies that neither species could have developed alone. "You have taught us something we thought we had forgotten," he told President Davis during one of their regular meetings. "You have reminded us what it means to be alive instead of just existing." As the sun set on the Nexari homeworld, President Davis reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had started this conflict as a small, relatively weak species that had accidentally woken up an ancient enemy. They were ending it as the leaders of a galactic alliance based on the principle that differences made everyone stronger. The galaxy was no longer a place where ancient powers could return and claim ownership over younger races. It had become something new, a community where chaos and order, youth and age, predictability and randomness could all exist together. Captain Brooks joined President Davis at the window as they watched the stars appear in the darkening sky. "Jake Morrison would have loved to see this," Brooks said quietly. "He did see it," Davis replied. "His sacrifice made all of this possible, and somewhere out there, other ancient threats might be stirring. But when they wake up, they'll find a galaxy that's ready for them. Dr. Barnes approached with his final report on Project Phoenix, the Alliance's new early warning system for detecting dormant ancient threats. "We're ready for whatever comes next," he announced, "and this time, we won't be caught by surprise." The Treaty of New Worlds had created more than just peace. It had established a new principle for galactic civilization, that diversity, unpredictability, and cooperation were more powerful than any ancient technology or rigid thinking. Humanity had triumphed not by becoming like their enemies, but by remaining true to what made them human in the first place.